Joining us for the first listening tour of the school year with the superintendent and the school board members. My name is Cherie Johnson. I'm the director of the Office of Strategic Communication and Community Engagement. We also have our superintendent, Dr. Bruce Benson, as well as school board chair, Holly Hazard, Vice Chair Scott Hirons, school board members Ms. Jamie Decatur and Ms. Healy, Ms. Patricia Healy here. Thank you so much. We host 3 listening tours a year in different parts of the county. This is a chance for parents in the school division to speak to the superintendent and the school board members in a town hall setting. The listening tour is part of both the communication and strategic plans. This evening, you have the opportunity to engage directly with our school leaders and provide input on issues that impact students and families. It's important for school leaders to have a conversation with parents. Better community and parent engagement is one of the top priorities for the communication office. Most of you signed in at the door, and we really appreciate it. You also placed your questions on note cards. During the meeting, I will serve as the moderator and read your questions. The superintendent and board members will answer the questions. You can also continue to fill out the cards with your questions, and the communications team will pick up your questions and bring them up here to me. We'll try to answer your questions on systemic issues, and if we do not have the answer for the specific situation, we will respond to you within several days with the information. Again, thank you for joining us. And now I would like to introduce, first of all, Dr. Tammy Hanna, our principal of Drew Middle School, followed by Dr. Benson and Ms. Hazard, who will discuss a pre-Labor Day start, and Mr. Hirons will also discuss the budget, and then we will open it up for the general questions.
Well, welcome and good evening. Just to add on to what Dr. Hanna said, one of the things that we believe that we should be doing is trying to modernize some of our instructional spaces across the division. And when we look at library media centers, it's kind of a big bang for your buck, because you're making a renovation to one portion of the building that will potentially impact every child and every teacher in the school. And we have some schools that have a few years on them, let's just say, but we need to keep them in play with the growth that we're experiencing. And so doing this kind of an upgrade is a way for us to expose large numbers of students and teachers to resources that are modernized. It's great to put a new roof on the building. That roof might cost you $3 million. It doesn't have much of an impact on what happens inside of the school, whereas a renovation like this does have a really positive impact on how our young folks are interacting with each other and the adults in the building. So in any case, I'm going to cut my remarks very short and just say welcome. We're glad you're here. It's very important that we engage and have an opportunity to have some interaction with our community and parents and beyond. And so thank you for being here.
All right. Well, again, welcome on behalf of the board. I'm sure you'll get to hear from many of us throughout the evening. I will kind of dive right in. The topic that they assigned me was the calendar, even though when I came rushing in, I really thought maybe I should get growth and traffic, because I won't tell you how long it took for me to get from Hartwood across the county. So anyway, I won't hit that one, but if I can, I will later. Calendar, that's something that was on the radar last year. I believe, so I will tell you, this is more of a single board member's comments on this particular topic. I think it's one that we need to engage with the community. I think we need to have a different process going forward. I think we need to start earlier in the process with a recommended calendar. I think we need to debate. I think we need to look, though, as well, what we are doing regionally. I am finding and having comments from teachers and instructional staff, or anybody who works in the county who live or work outside of the county, saying, gosh, couldn't we all have spring break at the same time, or other things like that. So I do think that there is some engagement we need to have there, but we also have a broader look. I, again, hope that we sort of change the process somewhat so that it can become to the board earlier in the year so we can have more debate. I believe that Mr. McCosker had wanted to be involved in that, and had, during our retreat, had said he wanted to gather some information for that. Many of the board members said, well, we need it by October, so we believe we are going to be moving forward with some recommendations on timelines and process in the next month or so. So stay tuned on that one. So that's just kind of to give you sort of a broad look on that. I believe Mr. Hirons can tell us about our other favorite topic, the budget.
The topic I was assigned was one of our favorite, the budget. So for process-wise, while the Board of Supervisors controls all of the revenue and all of the spending and money officially by the county, the school board does have a responsibility to develop a budget that we present to the Board of Supervisors as a funding request, what we would like them to fund. There's been a lot of back and forth over the years over that. That's the most contentious thing that the school board and the Board of Supervisors work on collaboratively. And sometimes that's a little bit of a dangerous word in that sense, collaborative, because sometimes it's not all that collaborative. And one of the challenges is with that is in Stafford County, we don't have a mechanism or a methodology right now to really fund the schools at a sustainable way. Right now, we present a funding request. The Board of Supervisors looks at all of their priorities, and we are another priority in their long list of priorities to fund. So then they return to us how much we get in local funding. Our funding is made up of local funding, state funding, and a small portion in federal funding. And what we're trying to work on this year is to come to an agreement with the Board of Supervisors on some sort of funding agreement, something that will give us some sense of predictability in how much funding we can expect to receive year to year and how much on the revenue side we will have going into the budget development. Because what happens is we often develop a budget and we're trying to fit as many needs as we can in there, and then we get to the Board of Supervisors, and obviously they can't afford to fund everything that we desire and want. So then that gets written up in the papers as not fully funding schools. That gets under the nerves of the Board of Supervisors that, well, we did fund a lot of their priorities, and then we then have to work within the constraints that we have within their funding. If we can come to an agreement, there are a couple of options out there on the board that are kind of being discussed right now fairly broadly. I hope over the next couple months we'll actually sit down as boards and discuss what methodology will work best. You know, my whole intent, and I think the intent of the school board, is to get all of us talking about a methodology and come up with a methodology. But we have started developing this year's budget. At least we've adopted our calendar. One of the things we're trying to do as a school board is be as transparent as possible. We're talking about the budget a lot during our meetings. We were very vocal and very transparent about our calendar development and also our goals and priorities. Over the last 3 meetings, we have adopted our FY19 budget goals and priorities. One of the things we're trying to do in there is continue to improve our educator compensation. We hope to go to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation or with within our budget a 2.5% salary increase for all of our staff. We'll also hopefully have in there some continue enhancing our salary scales that we're trying to get everybody up to at least the median of the market. So we improve staff compensation across the board. A couple other things we're trying to do is fund a focus teacher. If anybody has students in focus, especially if you've attended Falmouth Elementary or Ferry Farm, you know that you've had a shared focus teacher over the years. This year we do have within our budget very specifically fund focus teacher for each elementary school. I believe we need to fund 2 to get them at every school. And that's very important to Mr. McCosker. He has really been a driving force behind that. We really hope we're able to do that.
It's 3.
3.
Just
Try and get 3. Get our numbers correct, that's right. The other thing that is very important to the school board is class size. We adopted an initiative 2 years ago now of reducing class sizes in K through 5. We want to extend that or continue working on that in K through 5, but also extend it into the secondary schools, the middle and high schools. Start really working on our core classes in middle and high school. I know here when my children were students here, they had science classes and government classes, in the 30s. We want to really work with our administrators or our classrooms to reduce that, and that's going to really mean funding more teachers, so we hope we are able to find the funding to be able to continue to do that. So we will end up adopting a budget that we will recommend to the Board of Supervisors. They'll give us our funding in March-ish, and then we'll adopt the final budget in April. Sorry, I was long-winded.
Nope, no problem. Thank you so much. And we also wanted to announce with the federal impact aid forms, if you have not filled those out and returned those to the school, please make sure you do that. So that's funding for the school. So we definitely want to make sure we receive some of those federal impact aid forms. And now we will move on to our questions, all right? We'll start out with the first one. What policies, procedures, guidelines, and/or tools are in place to address the growing bullying problem in Stafford County schools?
So, as a school division, we have a clear set of values that the board has adopted, and it really sets the stage for our expectations for how our young people interact with each other, how our adults interact with our young people, and how our adults interact with other adults in the division. We value all of our learners, right? And we're all learners. First and foremost, our students, but also the adults in the organization. We value community, and that community could be a community within a classroom, or within a school, or within the larger community that we call Stafford County. And we intend to take care of each other in that context. We value excellence across the board in terms of academic achievement, preparation to enter the workforce, to become a citizen within our community. We have high expectations for how we expect to interact with each other. We value integrity. Simply stated, we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And we value respect. And we're going to treat each other with respect under all circumstances. And that really is a framework for how we expect everyone to interact across the division as a whole.
Okay.
I just wanted to follow up just really briefly because I had this conversation with Mrs. Holliday up outside or out in the lobby here. Because bullying is a big issue that we need to deal with in the school system, but also at home and our parents. It really needs a lot of parent interaction to help with bullying, and we need to figure out routes to communicate with the parents as well. When my student was here just last year, I got a phone call from Dr. Hannah one day, and my child was accused of bullying another student. As a parent, as soon as he walked in the door, no questions asked, give me your phone, go to your room, we're going to have a discussion later. That was before asking anything, getting a lot of the details. It was sort of a situation of assume guilt first, then let's work backwards and see what really happened. And it had an effect on him, so that would be the route I would take as a parent in the future. I appreciate Dr. Hannah for being very proactive with bullying here at Drew Middle School, because she does inform parents in that way very, very, very quickly at the first whiff of it.
If I could just make one more comment. I think the other thing that Scott certainly alludes to is about parental involvement. I know when the ninth graders start high school, or at least at the high school that my students attend, the principal goes through and says, do you know what all these websites are? Do you know what Twitter, everything you can put up there, and says, do you know what these are? And if you don't, you need to make sure you know. I do think that potentially in communication or in collaboration, see, I'm using my C, we could work maybe with local law enforcement and others to maybe do seminars for our parents and things like that. However, I will say we will have that, and I will probably be looking out at you all, the same people who come and are engaged in your child's school. Many times we don't see the parents that we need to have the conversation with of, do you know how to use your kid's phone? Oh, your kid can lock it and you as a parent don't know how to unlock it? That happened once in my house with and that phone was removed, as my child was very unhappy, because anytime I can get on their phone, I have to be able to do their combination. If it doesn't let me in, then the phone is removed. So I do think that we can try to do those kinds of things. I will tell you, as a board member, it's tough to hold things and wonder, do people really want to learn about some of these things? I think potentially we can do some things in the schools of kind of reversing what we're saying is your parent could take your phone, because maybe that's not the case. This could have a long-term impact on your ability to work for the FBI, the CIA, go into the military, go on, and try and bring it real to the kids. That's the only thing that comes, sort of in a broad sense to me. But I am open to suggestions. But I do think that's an area I'd love to combine with. But I would love for people to come.
Just one other add to that. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cater, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to share. Ooh, hi. I just wanted to share that I've had a lot of conversations with parents recently, and I've shared that bullying is incredibly near and dear to my heart, because I was severely bullied up until the 7th grade because I was cross-eyed. So you have to understand what someone who is being bullied is experiencing. They're going to miss, a lot of school because they don't want to deal with the bullying. I definitely did. I stayed home at least one day a week, and I faked sick to go home at least one day a week. And it's hard to explain to people how you're feeling, as a child. So I think it's also really important that we're relating to the children who are being bullied at home, but also in school, because kids are away from their parents when they're at school, and it's a really easy opportunity to behave in a way that you probably wouldn't in front of your parents, right? So it's also important, I think, that we address why the bullies are being bullies, insecurities or whatever the case may be. But it's a lot deeper than just calling names. There's a lot more going on that creates a bully. And so I think it would be really important to look at those issues and address those issues and really get to the root of the problem in order to support kids who are being bullied, but also to give some support to those who feel it is necessary to bully, because, again, it's a deeper problem.
Okay.
Thanks.
The next question. How does the county plan to move forward with the recent legislation passed regarding the newly required dyslexia awareness training for new and renewing teachers' licenses, as well as the creation and implementation of the new position of dyslexia advisor?
So our dyslexia advisor is going to be our new elementary literacy facilitator, and we're just getting started in that effort. But we have identified the person who has a background in reading specialist, and she will be assuming that responsibility for us.
I can add one thing. Just in general, I will tell you, I have. That's not sort of my area, that we defer most of that to Dr. Benson, but I would say this. I think that those kinds of trainings and stuff are important, but I would say every year that the Virginia legislature goes into session, we come out with another additional burden on our teaching, on our teachers, on something else they have to learn. I am not saying that it is not great for them to know a lot of medical and aid, but I will say it seems like every year we get some more requirement for our teachers or teaching staff that is not maybe exactly the in the classroom. Now, I'm not saying that that's not important, but I do think we need to recognize that a lot of these additional requirements and trainings and stuff come every year from our Virginia legislature, and we have to implement them. We have to create positions, and we have to do additional trainings. And I do think we need to look at that broadly. I'm not there, so, and I don't want to be, but I just would throw that out there, that every year we get a lot of mandates and unfunded mandates at that to increase certain areas. Not to say they're not needed, but they are expensive and do require time.
Okay. Will we get another high school?
Above our pay grade? Our responsibility is to develop the evidence and the requirements for an additional high school or any additional schools. We certainly are doing that currently. I thought I saw him walk in the room, but Mr. Horan's office and facilities is responsible. And we did hire last year as part of a budget. We funded a position, a demographic planner, to help us better count people. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Believe it or not, it's really hard to count kids. It's like trying to count and herd cats sometimes, I think. And trying to make those appropriate projections so that, because it is a big responsibility. You don't want to waste taxpayer money on schools you don't want. That's between a $40 and $120 million oops if you get it wrong and you build a school well before it's needed. But I think it's starting to become fairly clear evidence that an additional high school is going to be needed. We're currently working with the Board of Supervisors on our capital improvement plan, which dictates when things are going to be built and funded. And in that, we do have, we included in what we sent to them a wedge item as we're developing a new process for that, which included high school number 6. That's currently in the process. Dr. Benson might be able to talk a little bit more of where it's actually at in the process, the development of the CIP process, as well as the current year's development. And I think the Board of Supervisors, a good majority of them, agree that there's probably a need for high school number 6. So I think we're probably going to be seeing that, at least in the CIP, and documented that we need it sooner than later when shovels actually go in the ground. I don't know. I hope within early 2020s, so we can open something in 2023, 2024, somewhere along those lines.
The supervisors recognize that we have increasing student population, and a number of years ago funded additions to 4 of our 5 high schools. The only high school that didn't have an addition was North Stafford, and that had already been expanded earlier by the school board from a renovation. So 4 of our 5 high schools have an official capacity of 2,000 students, whereas previously they had a capacity of 1,800. This really started when we rebuilt Stafford High School. Instead of rebuilding for 1,800, we rebuilt for 2,000. And the supervisors, on their own initiative, suggested that we put these additions and that they would fund additions on our other high schools to increase the capacity by 200 students in each high school. I think they certainly recognized then that we needed more capacity. Right now, we are working with the supervisors on a joint capital improvement plan between the county and the schools, so that we can look together at the needs of the county as a whole, which is important, because while we are the advocates for the school system, they are the caretakers of the entire county. And there are lots of needs in this county which have increased dramatically because of the increased population all over. So I think we have a positive relationship with the supervisors with respect to our capital needs. We certainly as a board, I can't speak for the board, but I think anybody that's been to our discussions knows that there's pretty universal acknowledgement that we do need another high school. So we will be heading in that direction. But when we rebuilt Stafford High School, I believe it was about, was it 70 or 90 million? Something. It was at least $70 million, and that was rebuilding. So we're looking at most likely well over $100 million for the next high school. But we are actively looking. Our committee we have a advisory committee for the board that is actually I think looking at potential sites for that high school. Because when you build a high school, you need a lot of land, and you want to build it somewhere where there's a need. And certainly from what I've seen, the need is down here in the south. There's I mean, when we rebuilt Stafford High, we thought we'd have room. We thought we'd be moving back the students, the 525 students from Stafford Lakes that were sent up to Forge years ago because there wasn't room in Stafford. We said, oh, we'll rebuild Stafford, there'll be room. Well, guess what? We rebuilt Stafford. It was, even with the additional capacity, it was full. So, you know, it's certainly something that's high on my priority list, and I don't doubt that it's, you know, on the rest of the board as well, but can't speak for them. Thanks.
Okay.
We have as long as you ask first. Yeah, but we have to be very careful when we're, you know, when you speak to a board member. You know, we are a member of a board, and not one of us can do anything on our own. It takes an official meeting and 4 votes to really do anything. So just keep that in mind. Thanks.
Okay. Can you talk about elementary class sizes and how they've improved?
Take a first cut, and then Dr. Benson can probably. This began about 2 years ago with a class size initiative. I will say Mr. Hirons and I spent much time drafting and putting together some information that the board also agreed that we should start at the elementary level. 2 years ago, we had elementary classes over 30. The state allows us to go very high, and I didn't bring my briefing sheet. I did it the other morning on the radio show. And today we have no classes over 28 students and at the kindergarten level it's lower. I'll let you pull them all out, but
it's 27 actually, but yes.
27, sorry. So the nice thing is the board put that as a priority, and we also had staffing standards that we made focused on elementary class size reduction. Is that the farthest we want to go? No, maybe not. However, the limitation for for a couple of our schools, and Ms. Healy and I represent Margaret Brent, even if we needed another classroom, we don't have anywhere to put it without art on the cart and other things like that. I personally will fight that because I think a student needs to be in a room for art and those kinds of things. But we may get to a point with the growth that we are experiencing that, yes, on paper we need another classroom, and we don't have anywhere to put it except in a trailer or something like that. So at some point, and I have said this throughout the dreaded redistricting process, at some point our great class size reduction is going to hit up against physical capacity in some of our schools. I know you have more of the statistics, or both of you do, but.
Well, we have 542 sections of elementary classrooms across the division. We had 2 classes that exceeded the board's stated goals. We have advertised for a teacher vacancy to reduce those to below the goals. So once that position is filled, the board will have met their target for all 542 classes, elementary classes across the division. And while the state might say it's okay to have 35 kids in a 5th grade class, that's not okay with us. And I applaud the board for setting some goals, some targets in terms of class size, and then allocating the resources that we needed in order to make that happen for our young people and our parents in the community.
Okay. What are you doing to ensure schools are being proactive, ensuring equal treatment and equal access to LGBTQ students?
So we believe that we have a responsibility to take care of all of our students, regardless of any other circumstances that are out there. And I know that we've had considerable dialogue and comment during public opportunities at board meetings. Our primary goal is to make sure that all of our students feel safe in our schools and are able to take advantage of the incredible opportunities that we have available to them. And we understand that students need to feel safe in order to be able to do that. Parents need to know that students are safe in order for everyone to feel like we're okay with what's going to happen next, and that is that we help our young people get prepared for whatever it is that they want to do next, whether it's further education or entering the workforce, and hopefully being a citizen in our community and giving back in some manner. I think there's more work to do in that area, and we're committed to doing that. We're in a position, like many divisions across this country, and looking at some changes in terms of needs for our students, and we're going to continue to look at that and figure out what it is that we need to do as a school system to ensure that there's an equity in access, and that students feel safe in our schools and ultimately are successful, and again, in whatever they want to do next.
I was pausing a little bit. I was waiting for Dr. Benson to answer, sort of as he started with the bullying answer of what we value, and we value everybody, and everybody should have an opportunity to get a good education here in Stafford County. And the question really goes back to the bullying question. It doesn't matter why they're bullied. Bullying has to be addressed and has to be stopped, and that's all that is bullying someone because they're different, and we should not tolerate that and have that in Stafford County Public Schools.
And I'll just add that I think that it's really important that we never stop learning, right? Am I doing that?
Yeah.
You know, we value education, so it's important that not only that we're teaching our students, but that as adults we never stop learning. We learn, you know, about other people and how to show them that they are valued. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, but I think that education, you know, for all people, adults and children, is very important. Education in all areas, not just, you know, what's going on in the classroom.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll put in my 2 cents. The board is the entity that sets the policy for Stafford County Public Schools. And I think that this hopefully will be the year that we look at this as a policy and see what the needs are. Not taking a position, but I think that we've had enough people come to speak to us, to raise the issues to us, that I think it merits a very, you know, serious look at, you know, what is happening in our schools and what is our policy, and is there a need to make an adjustment to that policy. And I do think that the board will be open. That's my personal opinion. But I think it's something that we need to address, because we can say we value this, you know, this is important, but until we do something and you know, put it in our policy, you know, the people are coming to us and say we're not protected. So it's something that you know, I know there's been discussion among, you know, the board members individually, you know, about, you know, doing something or at least putting something forth. But I would like to see the board, you know, take the lead in putting something together, whether it's, you know, involving the board, certainly the superintendent, you know, will need to be involved, you know, the community as well. But it's time.
Just to be clear, you know, the differences that we bring to our community make us stronger as a community, and I don't want anybody to let go of that. Okay.
Okay. And we're going to move on to the next. I have 3, but they're all about the same topic. So with the answers, we can address all 3 of them. How much does it cost to give all staff a 1% raise? And how much does it cost to move all staff up a year in experience? What can be done to provide the teachers with ample pay? What is your plan to increase teacher pay to make Stafford County attractive to more teachers?
I think that ought to go to our budget guy.
He's not here.
Mr. Myron said.
It's 1.4 million for 1%, I believe it was.
I can give you a ballpark if that's okay. So it's about $2 million to do a 1% across the board. Okay, and in terms of the step model, the board adopted a market-based compensation model a couple of years ago. And so we're not looking at trying to preserve the step model that had been in place previously, which is very much a last century compensation model. So in a market-based model, the board adopts a market. We have 9 comparison school divisions. We look at the salaries for every year of experience across those 9 divisions. We determine what the median is at each year of experience, and then we look to see how far out we are from that median. And so there's a differentiated adjustment based upon how far out of market an individual year of experience is. So our goal when we put that model in place was to be able to do across the board increases, a percentage increase, and then make adjustments that are considered enhancements to get those positions that are out of market into the market. The previous model, the STEP model that was in place, had a 2.45% differential between each year of experience, and we were several years behind in granting years of experience. It quite frankly was set up in a way that it was not sustainable over time. So this model will improve our competitive position over time. I think there are some other things that we need to take a look at in terms of compensation for various parts of the scale, but it will help us improve over time. But we've also embraced a total rewards perspective. It's not just salary, it's also benefits. So you can give a 2% raise and have a good portion of that get lost with an increase in healthcare. We did a good job this past year. We had a zero increase in healthcare cost to employees. There aren't too many places across country, I think, that can say that. My hope is that we're able to hold the line another year. And so whatever increase we're able to give folks across the board, that they realize that increase in take-home pay and not just an improvement in their retirement position.
I'll make a comment. Even though one thing to remember about the budget is when we start the budget and we go across the street to the Board of Supervisors, where we start is with last year's funding. So when they start off and they say, are you fully funded? Okay, when I go across and say, poor Mr. Hirons and I have sat in that firing line at least 2 or 3 years running, we are always going in and asking to meet the needs of last year under the old, under the compensation system, it required this much money. So we come back another year, we've added more teachers because, as you all know, between 500 and 600 kids are arriving every year. We're trying to also meet our needs with regard to class size reduction. Over the 2 years, we've hired at least 48 teachers to meet those goals at the elementary level. Special education, sometimes we need additional resources to meet more requirements. So when we go across and we ask for more money, we assume that the Board of Supervisors wants to keep us at least where we were, but to go higher than that, we have to ask for at least $2 million for a 1%. Last year, when we went across, we got about $3.2 million, and last year the state took the VRS, the retirement money. It was supposed to be $700,000, and they accelerated it and said, well, gosh, we didn't meet revenue projections the year before, so we need to accelerate it. That was $2.8 million. So we got $3.2 million, 2.8 of that went directly to the state. We asked for that 1%, but I will say many times other unfunded mandates that we have to pay creep in there. If we have increased healthcare costs, those are there. But we start from a zero that we want to keep everything the same, and then we tell why we want to build on it. Last year there was a $7 million gap. Well, really it was a $10 million gap, and we got about 3 towards it. So I'm just trying to understand it's not many times that we don't want to ask for it. We have asked for it, but we can't not pay some of those other things. And please know I'm not just harping on the state, but many times we are handed some things last minute. It should have been a $700,000 payment. Gosh, that sounds like a great way to have gotten 1% right there.
From a Finance and Budget Committee perspective, the reason we worked up towards going into the budget season with a goal of a 2.5% increase is because of what Dr. Benson pointed out. The differential between years of service is about 2.45%. So for the teachers in the room, I know you guys know where these salary scales are on the website. When you go there and look, the goal of the adopted priorities and goals is to ensure that when you look at those salary scales and you see what the year ahead of you in experience is making, so if you're here for 23 years, when you look at what 24 years, what your expectation is next year, that salary, that's what our goal is, to ensure that you get to that level, and with 2.5%, it'll hopefully actually be a few dollars more. Obviously not a ton, but a few dollars more than the actual number.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I just wanted to note that, it's incredibly important to be able to pay our teachers to not only retain them, but to recruit them, because we want to bring the best and the brightest to Stafford County, and we want them to stay. But in addition to the teachers, we have to look out for our other employees, our paraprofessionals, who play a very important role, vital role across the school system, are not even on the first step of that median scale of 1 to 10 that Dr. Benson talked about. We looked at that last year. They aren't even on the scale. So last year, with the support of very many of our teachers, we gave additional funding to the paraprofessionals. They're still not even on the scale, right? No, but our goal is to get them on the scale and then get them up to the medium. But things like that, it's important. Our bus drivers, we gave extra funding to our bus drivers. We have a very difficult time, keeping bus drivers. So got to get the kids to school, so they can get to the class, and preferably get to school early so they can get the breakfast and, get in there and get ready to learn. But, our administrators and the administrative staff, the clerical staff in the office, when you go in, who greets you, who takes all those records and takes care of all that, we haven't looked at them in years. I guarantee you they're going to be below the market. 10 years, Mr. Decatur said. So this is an across-the-board issue for Stafford County Public Schools, and we're aware of it. The burden is on us. I should say the responsibility is ours to try to address the needs the best we can. Wish we could do it all at once. That's not going to happen. But I think we are making an effort, and we have different. We're trying to give different focus, in the years when it comes to our attention. But I must say I was very grateful for the teachers last year who supported us in giving the additional money to the to the paraprofessionals, because they recognize what a incredible addition they are to our school system, and we are blessed to have them. If you look at their salaries, they could make more working at McDonald's.
So it's kind of overwhelming if you think about it, and I appreciate the board's willingness to take on starting to improve with various groups of employees across the division, because you could just say, well, it's such a big number overall, we can't do it. So targeting resources to areas that are most out of market, and then adding different groups of employees on an annual basis will get us there over time. But to reinforce what Ms. Healy said, our paraprofessionals, and we have over 400 paraprofessionals in the division. Last year they were $2.5 million out of the low of the market, right? Not the median of the market, the low of the market. The board put $500,000 into that to do some differentiated enhancement, and we're still $2 million out of the low, but we've made some progress.
And one more budget question. One person asked, did the superintendent receive a raise or increase in compensation this year?
Yeah, so my salary is the same as it was when I got here. Okay, actually my salary is the same as your previous superintendent in the year that he started. My salary will be the same as long as I am here. So just to be clear about that.
That's right. He's correct. Because I signed the contract when last summer we extended Dr. Benson for 4 years. It sounds sort of strange. We were 2 years into the contract, but because of how contracting law works in Virginia, we cannot extend a certain amount. The board was excited that we wanted to keep Dr. Benson here because many of the initiatives that he is helping the board move in are long-term. None of the things that we are doing right now are done in one budget cycle or 1 year. As you can see, there's a lot of things to be doing. And we want to have longevity. That is something we heard from the community. When I came on the board, I have been on 5 years. In that time, I've had 3 superintendents. So I'm really excited to not have that experience going forward, at least for another 4 years, that we'll have Dr. Benson with us.
But if you ever got tired of me, I would understand that. I'm just saying.
Oh, it should be noted that Dr. Benson came to us asking for the extension, only extending time. He did not come to us asking for any sort of salary increase or anything else, and some of us kind of discussed, you know, like, should we give him some sort of increase or offer an increase, and he made it clear that that was not his intent. He wants longevity. He wants to have some stability here at Stafford County. It'd be nice if some professional athletes had the same thoughts as Dr. Benson had, some loyalty to their commitment. And I know Dr. Benson wants to be here to see some of the things that we are implementing and he's bringing to us actually be fulfilled and see Stafford County Public Schools get to where he wants them to be.
Okay, all right. And so I grouped 4 more questions again. These all have to do with the pre-Labor Day start. One parent asked, are parents going to have an opportunity to weigh in on the pre-Labor Day start? I'm a parent in favor of this earlier start date. Another parent asked, what were the results of the pre-post Labor Day start survey? Another asked, why is it that students have to start school before Labor Day? I don't understand. And the last one, I understand there is a proposal to change the school calendar to start school before Labor Day. What is the reasoning for this? So, sort of put all 4 of them out there.
Sure. Okay, I'll do it. I think part of the discussion has come up with regionally what's going on. As many of you know, even King's Dominion, that it's been called the King's Dominion rule, they close during the week of right before school. I think it's something we have to look at. There was a comment made at I believe it was at the governor's school, that one of the counties that has started pre-Labor Day saw an increase in their scores. That's anecdotal. I can't prove it, but it was interesting that the superintendent made the comment. It's in their minutes. It was very interesting reading to me. I think we have to look at it. I think it's because of AP testing, other things. It is harder. When I had an elementary school student, I wouldn't have ever thought that there was a reason. With all the things that are going on in our high schools, all the requirements, I think we have to look at it. I think we have to examine, is that in the best interest of our students and our staff? We also participate in regional schools. How does that impact the learning in those schools if we start later, they start earlier? I just think we have to logistically study it. As I said at opening, I think we have to have a good process. Most people know, so this isn't probably news. I don't think the last process we were using worked particularly well. I think we need to have a different process going in this year. We have to re-examine our policy and get started earlier. That's my thoughts.
I'll just jump in real quick. Parent who wanted to know if we're gonna, if you're gonna have any input, always have input, of course, and but it's really important that you know where to give your input. Email, show up at the school board meetings. If you're not getting responses to your emails, send them to all the board members. But make sure that you you are attending things like this and the school board meetings and emailing and calling and making your voice heard to your representatives so that they know what you want, because that's what we're here for, in all things, not just the school calendar. So.
And I would just note that the calendar for next year, the 18-19 calendar, has already been approved. So if there's any discussion about changing things, it would not be for the 18-19 calendar. Any other consideration would be for the 19-20 calendar.
Which, to make it clear, the 18-19 calendar that's approved starts as we have always for the last forever, post Labor Day.
Is there an option for extending the sports curriculum for children who don't make the sports teams, especially in the middle and high schools?
I'm not sure what that question is getting at. Is the person who asked it here?
Yes, I'm here. So when students try out for sports teams, sometimes they get on, and then there are lots of them who don't necessarily make the teams.
Okay.
I guess I'm thinking that I would love to see more options for sports in Midland high schools. Is it something that's been discussed, or
So
is there awareness around this?
an intramural kind of an experience, right? So
Yes.
didn't make the what might be considered the competitive team. Is there an opportunity to pursue that passion, right?
Because a lot of students, they do sports outside of school, so they, when they try out for the teams, chances are they're the ones that get selected, and then the others that are equally passionate but maybe not as talented don't get chosen.
So I don't know that there's been a lot of consideration in that area. I think that's something that we should explore, right? I also think that there are some sports, one that I happen to be partial to, running, that don't necessarily cut because you can run, right? But I think that's something that we should take a look at. And I think it's important, as part of our focus on wellness for our young people to pick something that they want to do to work on that physical wellness piece of it, and hopefully something they can do for a long time, well into their, let's just say, late 50s.
And the next question, actually this person has 3 questions on one card, so I'll go through. Why haven't elementary redistricting meetings started? When will the Embry Mill Elementary School get the green light? And how are you addressing the fleeing teachers to neighboring counties?
I can start with the redistricting one. The first one for elementary redistricting is going to be tied to the opening of Moncure Elementary School, because if we open Moncure, as the students currently look, we will open it at or over capacity, and that's the new school adding about 200 and some seats. So the thought was for the board was many times a redistricting happens better when there is a opening of a school. We talked about this actually during the high school redistricting. Every time it was one of the bullets on there was about elementary redistricting. Because to spot redistrict until you have a larger school that you are moving additional student or the current students into, it doesn't really make that much sense. I think we have talked, I think that the new way of looking at it and having people come and do that, I do believe it will be a very broad elementary redistricting. I think we have to look at the 610 corridor to the west, to the east, and into like Margaret Brent. It's interesting where the growth is this year, and so I would just say that we will not be, because of Moncure not opening until the fall of 19, that I don't think right now to go ahead and start meetings right now without accurate information, that a year from now we may have better information. I do believe we should start in the fall or late fall of that year, but that's one board member's take.
To speak to that Embry Mill question, that gets back to our needs and really the CIP, the budget, and the funding being controlled by the Board of Supervisors. And, to slap a little blame on the Board of Supervisors as an organization, not necessarily any of the folks that are there currently, because Embry Mill was approved a number of years ago. It would have been nice if they had been able to fulfill full proffers on that project and help fund the actual construction of that school. They did proffer property for two schools in there, an elementary school plot and a middle school plot. But now that school, which would probably be helpful, obviously with the school crowding there, Winding Creek and the other schools, it's going to be competing with high school number 6, rebuild or renovation of Ferry Farm Elementary School, and rebuild or renovation of Hartwood Elementary School. Both of those are fairly desperately needed as well, especially, in my opinion, Hartwood, because the growth area is over in that way. That school is still on well water. We have all kinds of challenges with that school. It'd be nice to be able to rebuild that school with larger capacity and actually on real water and a healthy environment.
And one little note, I'm sorry to say this, but I was part of the person who helped write this letter to the, at that time, county administrator. The land that was supposed to be used for the schools in Embry Mill is actually where the Jeff Rouse Center currently sits. We were told that we were to swap it. So I will tell you that the land that we were left with is not the easiest to build on. And there is a letter signed by a prior chairman, and I signed as vice chairman, saying you do realize it will cost us much more in ground costs to build on that site that we have been given. But we were told we were swapping it, and we had to sign. So just remember that school is more expensive because it is on different land.
When you look at the student population in our elementary schools, I think you see that the South is in need of an elementary school. For years, the next elementary school on our CIP was, on the 17 Carter. I don't know where it is now because, we've got these renovations and we have all kinds of things going on there. But if you look down here, you look at Rocky Run, oh my gosh, we moved lots and lots of students out of Rocky Run a few years ago. Well, guess what? They've been replenished. Their numbers are way up. Hartwood, we moved students out of Hartwood. Hartwood's way up. Ferry Farms used to have some room, but they're getting up there now, and I know Grafton and Falmouth as well. So this Carter is growing down here. On I'll call it the 17, but in the South, and it would be my request of the board to look at where the need is for the next school. A lot of students from the South End here are coming up to Margaret Brent, and that's a fairly long bus ride for them. But again, it's like we have to, like, we move the students up to Colonial Forge, or we're moving them to Mountain View, and the kids from here are traveling extensive rides because the schools aren't here. So I think when we do get to a point where we can fund an elementary school, what we need to do is to look at where is it needed most. And I would be surprised if it's not somewhere down here in the southern end, because for a while all the growth was in the north. Well, north is getting built out. There's still some growth, but I think you look at that Hartwood area, you look at the up on 17, there's a lot of growth coming there, and they're coming with kids, and they're going to be coming to the schools. So it's our job to determine where we need it, and then do the advocacy for it. So just because we have some school sites doesn't necessarily mean that that a school's going to be built on that site.
With regard to teacher turnover, we reduced our teacher turnover this past year by about 3%. We were about 11.4%. We were down in both the numbers of teachers that were retiring and the number of teachers that were leaving us to take employment elsewhere. That's a trend that I hope that we continue to improve in. We're making some inquiries to some of our surrounding divisions to get a handle on what their turnover was this past year. I do know that with some counties to the west of us, there was turnover as much as 20%. I would also note that the majority, in terms of the number of teachers that we lost, were in years 0 to 5, which says to us that there's something else there that we probably need to attend to. And we're going to see what information we might be able to glean from our first-year teachers a little bit later at a special event that we're holding in November, specifically for teachers who this is their first year teaching ever. We would love for them to stay and become part of our Stafford County Public Schools family, but we need to kind of get a handle on what are the things that they're thinking about that might be causing them to consider moving elsewhere. In terms of our veteran teachers, we absolutely value our veteran teachers. We couldn't do what we do without our veteran teachers. They provide not only support for our young people across the division with an incredible amount of experience, but they also mentor our new teachers. I am hopeful that once the board hits the target for getting everyone to the median of the market, that we take a look at what would be our next goal in terms of teacher compensation. So whether that's changing the group of comparison divisions or raising the bar to maybe the bottom of the top quartile in terms of compensation, or looking at the potential for something in a career adjustment for teachers that have spent their entire career with us. There are a number of things out there that I would like the board to look at, but I also would like the board to hit that first compensation target before we consider what the next thing would be.
Redistricting real quick, because I think it's important to note, or to just say that I would be a huge advocate for, sorry about the can of worms, but looking at a countywide redistricting at all levels. And I know that we discussed this, but I just think that it's important to address some of the piecemealing that's been happening as far as the redistricting is concerned, and look at the feeder patterns. And I don't know, that it now would be a good time to do it, but having gone through that process once, I just think it's important that we get it all right, in one clean swoop. So,
and that the board's support of a GIS and a planner, I think, is also going to continue to get us better information. They have pictures of what each area is growing and how many kids are generated. The more accurate data that we have, the better we can do. However, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I will anyway, redistricting is awful. It's awful sitting here. It's awful sitting there. In a growth area, we have to figure out how to get a handle on growth and making sure we use space that is within our school system, and potentially, some of you may realize there's some empty buildings in Stafford County. Can we lease some of that space? Can we do some things and be creative? I don't know how many of you know that we are leasing space at the University of Mary Washington building on 17, because during the day they don't have any classes there. It's an evening program. We are leasing for our alternative and non-traditional education. They are now on the first floor there. It's an amazing space. We have gotten them out. We have opened up some classrooms at Head Start to be able to get some of the preschool. I won't open that can of worms yet. But I think we are beginning to think creatively, but I think that's just the beginning. I think we need to look at some other buildings.
And on that, redistricting, the alternative to redistricting, while it's painful, is just start buying trailers and put classrooms in trailers. I'm not a fan of trailers. I know there's some studies that say it doesn't really have a lot of effect on the kids' academic ability or academic achievement. Some folks like trailers. I don't. I'm very proud that in Stafford County, I think we currently have 2 trailers, and they're kind of for construction that's going on to give a little space. And I don't know if that music one ever got done or not. But Prince William County, I think they have 244 trailers across their division. I remember going to Godwin Middle School in Prince William County, And in 7th grade, the majority of my classes were in trailers. And I remember going outside in below freezing weather to get to those trailers. And when the heat failed in 2 of them, I think my fingers are still a little frostbitten from that. So I'm not a fan of trailers, and as painful as redistricting is, it's a better alternative in my book.
All right. The next question. When are we going to allow kids who are homesick to Skype in or something similar to class and hear the lecture? It could also be for absences in general.
I can start. Well, I would love for us to be a connected community, right? No matter where you are, being able to participate, what's going on in your school. We heard a story from Dr. Hannah at the beginning this evening talking about a student that made not a good choice and ended up someplace that they were disconnected from their classroom, but were able to participate what was going on in that classroom through the use of shared documents. And we made a significant investment in moving everybody in the school division to the G Suite applications this past year. Phenomenal effort by our technology folks, and there are a lot of resources there that we can use collaboratively across the division, not only within school but without school. And so opening up the possibility for remote participation, yeah, I'm all for that. We have some challenges in our county. We have portions of our county where we don't have that kind of access. And so, one of the things that would be a concern to me is making sure that all students in our community have an opportunity to engage that way. So there's some infrastructure work that needs to be done, and maybe some public-private partnerships to extend access into parts of the county where that kind of service does not exists currently, and that would really open up the door for us to have an opportunity across the board for kids to participate, whether they're homesick or any place else they might be. And we're exploring those options. We actually had a meeting this week to look at a solution from someone who's a new provider to the area. But we've also been doing some research about kind of checkout hotspots that folks could use to take home in order to be able to access internet services. So yeah, I am all for the possibilities I think that are out there for us moving forward, whether it's Skype or some other technology. Google's got a lot of interesting collaboration possibilities built right into that. We're going to need to do some professional development because it's a little bit different working with young people that are in 2 or more locations. If you've got a core group of students in a classroom, and let's just say for whatever reason you've got another 5 that are participating remotely, we want to make sure that they're having an experience that is comparable as much as it can be to the students that are in that brick and mortar space, and that's a skill set that needs to be developed.
Good.
Vincent, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot to follow up on that question. And do you know, or if you need to ask a friend, you can too.
I see my phone a friend.
What kind of challenges do we have with the state and state regulations and state requirements on being able to provide that type of learning environment where, I'm not talking about distance learning of virtual Virginia or anything like that, but a classroom and a kid is out for an extended period of time, but he can participate by Skype, et cetera, in attendance and those types of counts as well.
So the board amended one of our local policies that actually allows us to do that by making sure that kids have a comparable experience and not necessarily tied to the guarantee of seat hours for participation in a particular class, and that's something that the board approved. So the stage is kind of set to be able to do that. We have some other challenges though, and again, that's how do we get access to everybody across the division. We have been putting in a fiber network around the division, around the county, that has a lot of dark fiber on it, and so there are possibilities there for public-private partnerships. The issue is that we funded it with VPSA funds, so those funds were borrowed at a lower rate for school systems. If we were going to explore some kind of public-private partnership, there would have to be some kind of agreement deal to have that loan bought out in order to be able to use that dark fiber for other resources. But there's real possibility there for all kinds of opportunities, I think, across the county. There's also the ability for us to work more closely with the county, and so as we get fire stations in areas that we don't have good connectivity, there's a possibility for us to have that connectivity provided through our fiber network as well.
It's interesting that we got this question because just today I got a phone call from a grandmother who lives somewhere in my Heartwood district, and I can tell you, if you look at a map and they have the blops or whatever of, ooh, no connection, I can tell you in my district there's a fair amount of those blops. But her comment to me was, and I thought this, and I had not thought of it this way, she has a high school granddaughter, and she said, I just want to tell you about the stress that my daughter goes through. And I said, okay, tell me about that. And she said, many of my her teachers have moved to a tool called Turnitin, I guess. And you can submit your paper over the internet. And she said, my daughter at 9 o'clock will be trying to get on there, and the internet goes down. And there's no way. And we're driving around trying to find that. Now, she said, realistically, she says, I am 80 years old. This is all new to me. But she said, I think we need to be really aware of that problem in certain areas that Turnitin and those. Now, there is an alternative way to turn it in, but she said many of them are now streaming into a assumption that everybody is connected. And she said, I'm really calling to tell you that they're not. She gave me her address, and I sort of pulled up my driving around Heartwood and went, oh, I know where you live. There's not even cell phone service out there. So I do think it just was amazing. She called me today, and it really made me rethink about that, of how do we partner. One of our areas of hope with our 3-on-3 committee is to talk about shared services. I think this is a great one that if we can get everybody to meet, this would be another one to put on that list of saying, how can we do that to deliver to everybody, and for any of those who it's a financial burden, how do we facilitate making sure that our kids have that kind of access? I know it's not just Heartwood, I just know a lot of the spaces there.
And the next question, and I can help with this one. How can people raise awareness about the improvements our public schools have made? So I know one thing, as Director of Communications, our office works really, really hard to push out positive information and information about the school division with our website, also with social media, and also the robocalls and the emails you might hear from our office. So we're working really hard with the schools to find out the positive information in the different departments so that we can push that information out. And this year, currently, we're working on our first annual report, which will be coming out next week, but I can also let Dr. Benson talk a little bit more about that.
So we report annually to the board as to how we're doing. That's rooted in the goals that we have in our strategic plan. So we look at student achievement, we look at how we're doing with our workforce, we look at how we're doing with managing our resources, and how we're doing with communication, which is our fourth goal area. But this is the first time that we've put together a publication that is designed to go out to the community. So we're excited about that. We're looking at what that delivery model will be. It's probably going to be kind of the Reader Digest version with a link to the rest of the information. But I want you to know, I mean, we also have challenges, right? And we're going to continue to have challenges. So the report will identify areas that we've made some improvement in, but it's also going to call out some areas that we feel like we should be doing better in. And, folks can say what they want about some other, standardized assessments that are out there, but I would just say that I think we can do much better with our SAT scores and ACT scores, and our the ability of our young people to write analytical kinds of papers. And we kind of hover right at the state average, and quite frankly, we're better than average. So we're going to be looking to get some improvement in those areas.
Apologies for telling a daughter where she's supposed to be. Like, I thought we had that connected, so I apologize, but I could see the, where are you? You're not supposed to be there. So.
All right. This one, why are children in the peer model program preschool not allowed to ride the bus to and from school? And that's Teresa Childs, she's here. Okay.
So when I asked that question, I should say in the morning classes, why are in the AM classes, they're not allowed to drive to school? I understand there's a shortage of bus drivers, so the drop off, I can understand not being dropped off. But there's a bus coming into your neighborhood, why they're not allowed to be bused to school if a bus coming to their neighborhood or bus from school in the same capacity?
Yes, I don't know, but I'll look into that. Clearly, there was a decision made at some point to not provide transportation for students that are the peer role models, right, within the pre-K classes. So I'll have to do some research as to when that decision got made and what considerations were given.
It may also depend on the type of bus. From what I serve on the Head Start Policy Council, so I'm not. Please know I'm not giving you the final answer, but I do know that sometimes certain buses can only carry certain students on them, that they are not allowed to carry Gen Ed students, but that may or may not be. But I have heard that before. Like I said, we'll look into it, but that for some reason, but it's one of those things that you've heard and you're going, well, is that really the case? And it might be, because I know we're challenged with using some of our Head Start buses, of how we could maybe come up with ways to transport other students, and we've run into some red tape.
I asked the question, I just
Yeah, no, I appreciate
Ms.
it.
Childs, you're referencing our pre-K program, not Head Start, correct?
It's a pre-K program.
Okay.
So
Well,
that's embedded within the elementary.
yeah. Okay. We'll do a little research for you.
Do we have
Okay.
our contact information?
Yes,
We have
I'll
name.
need to get your email and phone number. Okay, thank you. That'd be great. And our last question, what is being done to address the shortage of tech ed teachers?
Yeah, so we clearly have to be more aggressive in our recruiting. The folks that have technical certifications are really hard to come by, and they're in incredible demand. Correct, Mr. Nichols? Yes. And that's a challenge, I think, for divisions, not just in the Commonwealth, but all across the country, particularly as we reinforce that. Our job is not to determine the path of a student, right? We want to make sure they're prepared to do what they want to do next. And coming out of school with an industry certification and being able to walk into actually, a great job is very attractive, and becoming more so, given the opportunities that are out there and the vacancies in any number of fields that are associated with tech ed. We're going to need to be more aggressive. We may need to also look at various incentives in terms of getting folks to come here in areas that are hard to staff. The downside of that is the state is starting to identify pretty much every area as hard to staff because of the teacher shortage. I'll be participating in a large meeting with the governor next week on Tuesday to talk about the teacher shortage in the Commonwealth, but it's not just the Commonwealth, it's the country.
Dr. Benson and staff a heads up, you'll be getting this question again during our budget development meetings of do we need to look at additional incentives? You did mention it, but I know we've had members who've asked it over the last at least 2 years of do we need to look at additional incentives for teachers that we really struggle to be able to find. Foreign language, math, and science are real struggles, and then some of these specialty teachers as well. And some of these programs that really require some fairly specific certifications are really tough. And I know we asked before, and you'll be getting the question again this year, do we need to look at additional financial incentives and stipends for those types of instructors, educators?
Okay. Received 2 more cards, so one of them, could we as citizens create some programs to adopt a teacher to donate towards their professional development, defray the cost to the county, possibly as a charitable donation for teachers?
So in terms of charitable donations to teachers, I would encourage you to think about, if you're looking to give, to consider the Stafford Education Foundation that provides grants to teachers for innovative teaching grants. Wonderful opportunity. We also provide scholarships to graduating seniors who are interested in pursuing a career in education. Individual schools, are always looking for folks that might want to volunteer. We also have schools that participate in the Adopt a Classroom program, so there are opportunities there as well. But they are pretty much school-based. There's not like a division-level clearinghouse for those opportunities.
I would just make one comment. I think there are avenues to do that, but the only thing is you need to be very careful if there is direct compensation given to the teacher, because they will have to declare it on their taxes. We found that with regard to buying meals. Just saying.
I thought for sure you'd be recruiting off tournament for the Stafford Education Foundation.
Next year, we were.
The great foundation that does provide a lot of good services to our teachers.
Last card again. Okay. Is the school board working on offering TDT services to students who do not have Medicaid?
I think we're going to need some help from whoever asked that question.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So TDT services are services for children who may have behavioral or special education issues, and at this current point, unless you have Medicaid, you're not offered those services within the county. And there's no other vendor besides National Counseling Group who is doing it for the county. And from my understanding, even if the children or the child needs that service, unless you have Medicaid, you can't have that service.
Can we get your name, and we'll follow up, okay? Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, last card again. Okay. Any discussion or weighted decisions about AP credit, whether in CGS or not, or if taking the AP exam or not? Okay, or if that person wants to help. Okay. Any discussion or weighted decisions about AP credit, whether in CGS or not, or if taking the AP exam or not?
It really comes down to, currently our policy is to get the weighted class point score, you have to take the exam and AP classes, right?
Unless you're in the governor's school.
Yeah. I know we've had that discussion, and as a parent of children that are starting AP classes, I hope so. I hope we have that discussion.
So that would come up as a part of our annual review of the high school program of studies, okay? And I'll weigh in on that just a minute, in that I think the rigor in those courses is in the curriculum and is not really attached to whether or not the child is taking the AP test. So I think that's something that we will be looking at as a board, and there are folks that have all kinds of opinions on that. But the student who participated in the class, experienced the rigor of the curriculum, whether they took the test or not. So I think that's a discussion that we're going to need to have.
Right now, in my opinion, is students just take the test, and parents having to incur the cost of those tests, even if the student starts the class and is in the class and is really not being that successful. He's encouraged to take the test just to get the additional credit for it, the additional points, and then ends up with, what's the low score, 1 or 2 on the AP exams, and that is really detrimental to the division as well.
And quite frankly, sometimes it is appropriate to take the test, but sometimes it's not. If I'm going to, and I taught chemistry, so let's just say I'm going to major in chemistry. I don't think I would pass up on first year chem or freshman chem at the college level to substitute an AP chemistry class. Maybe I'm going to major in liberal arts and I'd like to get my lab science out of the way. I think I'm going to take that test and see if I can get a high enough score to get credit to knock that out. So there are some other considerations that should come into the mix, as opposed to just, gosh, should take that test. Teachers, absolutely want to know how their kids are doing on the test, because that's an indication of the job that they're doing with curriculum and their interactions with young people in their class, and I get that. There are other ways to assess that beyond having to pay to take the test.
Okay. Well, this concludes our first listening tour for the school year. We'll conduct future listening tours or teletown halls, where we do it by telephone, in January and April. Thank you for joining us tonight and for coming out. We know you're all very busy. I hope this event has been informative and helpful. And for the two young ladies, if you could come afterwards and come up so I can get your information so we can get in touch with you. Thank you so much, and have a good evening and have a safe trip home. Thank you. Thank you.